So, good afternoon. We are the Group 7, and we are going to discuss all about iOS. So, we will be focusing on the history of iOS, as well as its features, accessibility, compatibility, functionality, and last is the UI or the user interface. So, my name is Jumao-as, and I will be the one who will report about the history of iOS. Next would be Miss Christine Joy Pacanya, who will talk about the features of iOS. Next is Miss Monica Joy Madraso, who will report about the functionality of iOS. And lastly, Miss Casey Blase, who will tell us about the user interface. So without further ado, let's start with the history of iOS. iOS was created by Apple Company in the year 2007. This OS was based on Mac OS, which was also developed by the Apple Company. Unlike any other OS, iOS is a proprietary OS, which means not everyone can access this kind of OS. Only those devices that are produced by the Apple can run this operating system. Now that we know what is an iOS, let's talk about its version from the very beginning up until its latest version, which is version 16. So version 1 was developed on June 2007. So during version 1, before it is called iOS, it was called iPhone OS. And Apple was marketing this, they just said that this OS was made for their brand new device, which is the iPhone. Next would be the iPhone OS 2, which was released on July 2008. So during this version, the Apple, the iOS introduced the App Store, as well as they start to support real third-party apps. Next is the third version, which is the iPhone OS 3, which was released on June 2009. So in this version, they added different kinds of features such as copy and paste, and also MMS support. So this is also the first version wherein they start to support the iPad. So the next version is the version 4. And during this version, they start to change from iPhone OS into iOS version 4. This was released during June 2010. So during this version, they added new features which are FaceTime, which is still very relevant in today's version. They also started to make folders in order for you to organize your apps, as well as they start adding personal hotspots and also iBooks. And this is the OS started to drop support on original iPhones. The next version is iOS 5, which was released on October 2011. So during this time, wirelessness is very trendy during this year. That's why Apple decided to add new features such as iCloud, iMessage, and Notification Center during this version. So the next version is iOS 6, which was released on September 2012. So this is the version where they introduced Siri to their device. And then this is also the time wherein the competition with Google's Android was very hot. And also during this time, iOS decided to introduce their own Maps app, but this received a very bad feedback because users are complaining that there are some bugs with the app, as well as giving bad directions. That's why the CEO of Apple, which was Tim Cook, fired the head of iOS development, which is Scott Forstall, because of the existing bug that happened during the Google Map, as well as not apologizing because of failure. So the next iOS version is the iOS 7, which was released on September 2013. Because the former head of the iOS development was fired, there was a new one appointed, which was Johnny Ive, which also is the Apple's head of design. So during this version, unlike the previous version, which many users are complaining about the bugs and the app, which is the Google app, but in this version, users are complaining because of the changes, because of the overhaul of users interface. Many users are complaining about the fonts, which they think are getting smaller than the previous version. So they are complaining a lot during this version because of the overhaul of the user interface. The next version is the iOS 8, which was released on September 2014. So during this version, iOS was focusing on delivering major new features, payment system in Apple Pay, as well as Apple Music subscription services. So the next version is iOS 9, which was released on September 2015. So there are a lot of users complaining that they said that iOS is no longer stable and is not a solid performer anymore. So to focus on solidifying the foundation of the operating system. So they start to improve the speed as well as the responsiveness, stability, and performance of the OS. So next version is the iOS 10, which was released on September 2016. So in this version, they are mainly focusing on interoperability as well as the customization. So during this version, users are now able to delete some built-in apps in their devices. And also they started to add new animations and effects for the messages. So the next version is iOS 11, which was released in September in the year 2017. So in this version, they start to shift their emphasis from the iPhones to the iPads because Apple decided to make major focus on turning iPad Pro series into models which you can replace laptop with this iPad. They start to add new features for iPad such as the drag and drop support, split screen apps, and many more. So the next version is the iOS 12, which was released on September 2018. So during this version, they mostly focus on making improvements to commonly used features. So they also start to improve Siri by making a Siri shortcut. So the next version is iOS 13, which was released on September 2019. So during this version, iOS no longer runs on iPads because the company decided to make another OS for iPads, which is called iPad OS. So during this version, they mainly focusing on repairing core features, and also during this version, they started to introduce the dark mode. So the next version is the iOS 14, which was released on September 2020. So during this version, there was no any major change, and but there are some few minor changes on the user interface. So the home screen widgets as well as improving the privacy controls. The next version is the iOS 15, which was released on September 2021. So during this version, they start to improve one of their popular feature, which is the FaceTime, they start to add share play, wherein users are allowed to share screenshots and videos during FaceTime. And also during this version, Siri is now completely offline. So the next and the last version for iOS, the very latest version of iOS right now, is iOS 16, which was released last September during this year. So in this version, the major changes in here is the lock screen customization, wherein they added photo shuffle and widgets to the lock screen of the devices. And that's all for the history of iOS. Next will be the features, compatibility, as well the accessibility of iOS, which will be reported by Miss Christine Joy Pacanya.
Here are the new features available in iOS 16. Key features and enhancements. Lock screen. Lock screen gallery allows you to make the lock screen on your own. Browse a gallery of many options, each with unique background. Stylized view of date and time and information you can see at a glance. So lock screen switching. You can switch your lock screen throughout the day. You touch and hold it and then swipe. Lock screen editing. Easy to customize font, color, or placement of elements on your lock screen. iCloud Shared Photo Library. Smart sharing contribute photos manually or smart features to make sharing seamless, like a switch in a camera. Automatic sharing using Bluetooth proximity sharing suggestions in for you. Messages. Edit a message. So you can now edit a message for up to 15 minutes after sending it. Recipients will still be able to see a record of edits made to the messages. Recover recently deleted messages. You can also recover recently deleted messages for up to 30 days after deleting them. Mail. Smart search corrections. Intelligent search improves your result by correcting typos and using synonyms for your search items. Missing recipient and attachment. You get notified if you forget to include an important part of your message, like an attachment or recipient. BIMI support easily identifies authenticated email messages with BIMI, or known as brand indicators for message identification. Privacy safety check. This new section in the settings helps people in domestic and intimate partner violence situations quickly reset the access they've granted for others. It also helps to manage which people apps you've given access to. Lock hidden and recently deleted albums in photos. The hidden and recently deleted albums are locked by default and can be unlocked using your iPhone authentication method like Face ID, Touch ID, or your passcode. Pasteboard permission. Apps needs your permission before accessing the pasteboard to paste content from another app. 3. Landscape Face ID. Face ID works in landscape on supported iPhone models. Speed security response. Get important security improvements to your device even faster. These improvements can be applied automatically between standard software updates. Lockdown mode. This new security mode provides extreme protection for very small numbers of users who face grave targeted threats to their digital security. Accessibility. Apple Watch mirroring. Fully control Apple Watch from iPhone and use switch control, voice control, or any other assistive features on iPhone to get the most out of your Apple Watch. Detection mode in magnifier. Get rich descriptions of your surroundings with a new magnifier mode that contains joint detection, people detection, and image description. Additional customization options for sound recognition. Train your iPhone to listen to sounds that are specific to your environment, such as the beeping sound of an electrical appliance in your kitchen the precise ring of a doorbell in your home and more. You can use iOS 16 and iPad OS 16 with these devices. For iPhone, iOS 16 is compatible with iPhone 8 up until the latest version as well as iPhone SE second and third generation. For iPad, iOS 16 is compatible with iPad Air 3rd to 5th generation, iPad 5th to 10th generation, and iPad Pro 1st to 6th generation.
Functionality in iOS. iOS is derived from Mac OS X and is a Unix-like OS. There are four abstraction layers within iOS. First is the core OS layer. Second is the services layer. Third is the media layer. And last is the Cocoa Touch layer. First is the core OS layer. Core OS layer is the last layer of the iOS stack and sits directly on top of the device hardware. This layer provides a variety of services including low-level networking, access to external accessories, and the usual fundamental operating system services, such as memory management, file system handling, and threads. Second is the services layer. This layer is it should be the connection to the outside world, whether that be a database, a remote server, a Bluetooth connection, or a Bluetooth connection. And this layer is based on the concept that a system should be separated into different layers, like an onion with a different responsibilities on each of those layers. Third is the media layer. Media layer is a software frameworks and technologies that enable audio, visual, and other multimedia capabilities within iOS-powered devices. The last is the Cocoa Touch layer. It's a user interface framework provided by Apple for building software applications for products like iPhone, iPad, and iPad Touch. Developers can use the iOS Software Development Kit. First is the SDK. SDK is the provide tools for Apple's touchscreen interface and for its proprietary iOS operating system, which is used to run Apple's iPhones as well as Apple's other mobile devices such as the iPad. Second is the IDE. IDE is uh, IDE is a software application that helps programmers develop software code efficiently. It increases developer productivity by combining capabilities such as software editing, building, testing, and packaging an easy-to-use and application.
User interface in iOS, and here are the user interface in iOS. Concept Draw Pro, UI pattern, GUI interface, graphic user interface alarm setting, and lastly, direct manipulation using multi-touch gestures. And Concept Draw Pro is for quick and easy drawing professional looking graphical user interface. UI patterns is for prototyping and designing user interface for the applications of iPhone. GU, GUI interface. The GUI interface is for interact the electronic devices such as graphic icons and visual icons. It is also for text based interface, and it is also for type command or text navigation. Graphic user interface alarm setting. It is for, of course, to set your alarm. Like for example, setting an alarm for 4:30, the day, the week or days, or let's say, it is also for setting the weeks, and lastly, it is also for setting the alarm ringtone. Direct manipulation using multi multi-touch gestures. The direct manipulation using multi-touch gestures is for swipe, tap, pinch, and lastly, reverse pinch.